In yesterday's congressional hearing on UFOs and UAPs, lawmakers revealed a classified clip that changes everything. In it, a U.S. military drone locks onto an orb UFO over Yemen. Another drone fires a Hellfire missile straight at it. The missile hits and the orb just shrugs it off. No explosion, no damage. It literally drags the wreckage with it and just keeps flying like nothing happened. Think about that. Our most advanced weapons can't even touch it. And that is just the beginning. Whistleblowers testified about secret crash retrieval programs. Nuclear bases almost went live under UFO interference. Records and lives are being destroyed. And the evidence is hidden away with private contractors so top government officials can't even find it. Today's episode is about technology that outmatches us, our government that covers it up, and the whistleblowers risking everything to tell the truth. I'm breaking it all down in this episode. The footage, the testimony, the cover-ups, and why this is the most shocking UAP hearing yet. And it's only the tip of the iceberg. Okay, let's go. Now, we have to start from the beginning. Representative Anna Paulina Luna gives the intro and she sets the tone immediately. It is dramatic, it is serious, and there are shots fired, specifically against Sean Kilpatrick, the former head of the Pentagon's UAP office, AARO, who isn't just criticized, he's dragged. Like, she outright calls him a liar, saying his job looked less like investigating UFOs and more like burying testimony. And he has been widely criticized by people in the UFO and UAP space for not taking the phenomena seriously and seeming more like a government psyop than someone who actually wants to expose the truth. And there are many more dramatic words and quotes in this intro, but I want to get right to the juicy part. So we'll fast forward over this and over Representative Jasmine Crockett's intro, where she expresses some skepticism over UAPs being anything more than human technology of our adversaries. But I think the only important point here is that it is a bipartisan hearing, and I want to underscore that this phenomena is not a political issue, it is a human one. And I'm glad to see people on both sides of the aisle in Congress investigating this. All right, now let's get to what we're all really here for, the witnesses. First up, we've got Jeffrey Nusatelli, and oh my God, buckle up. This guy isn't just some random person. He's Air Force with years of service at Vandenberg during one of the busiest and most important missile launch periods in U.S. history. In other words, when he says he saw something, you listen. So picture this, it's between 2003 and 2005, late at night on base, and things start getting really weird. First, we have the Vandenberg Red Square incident. Contractors and security forces suddenly see this massive glowing red square hovering silently over not one but two missile sites. A giant floating square just hanging there in the dark, and then, without a sound, it drifts across the base and disappears into the hills. And here's the kicker. Official Air Force records on this do exist. Nusatelli swears AARO and even the FBI have them. But it doesn't stop there. Next, we have a triangular craft. Later that same night, while Nusatelli was on duty, the radios exploded with panic about an object moving over the ocean. Guards are yelling, "It's coming right at us! It's coming right for us! Now it's right here!" When Nusatelli arrived on scene, he found 5 extremely shaken witnesses who all described the same exact thing. A black triangle, bigger than a football field, slides in over their position, silent as death. It hovers and then blasts away at a speed no human aircraft could ever dream of. And then there is the flight line incident. Another patrol spots a bizarre light jerking around near the flight line. They think maybe it's some rogue aircraft and scramble an armed response, but before backup arrives, the thing either lands or hovers right over the strip and then vanishes, literally gone in a blink. Witnesses later admitted that they were threatened into silence. Jeffrey says it did stay quiet until about 2005, when another massive triangular craft silently floated over the military installation for several minutes before heading west and disappearing entirely. Upon questioning further on in the hearing, he describes how 20 years later, what sticks with him most is how the objects seem to have responded once they were noticed by humans. He says, quote, "It performs for you. Like the crafts knew they were being watched." I mean, I just got chills. That is so creepy. And we're talking about repeated visitations by UAP at one of the most critical military facilities there is, at a time period when they were performing some of the most important missile launches we've done. You may remember that this echoes the testimony of Lou Elizondo at previous congressional hearings, where he clearly addresses the interest that these UAPs seem to have in our most sensitive military sites and our most powerful and destructive weapons. But anyway, next, the tone shifts when Nusatelli shares his own personal encounter, an orb that he sees in his own backyard back in 2005. He's just at home hanging out with two off-duty police officers when this pulsing orb of light shows up, 30 feet wide and intensely glowing. And at one point, it's just 200 feet above his house. Then, like it was never there, it drifts back into the sky until it looks just like another star. Jeffrey finishes up his testimony with a plea to Congress that is emotional and almost desperate, and I can understand why. He begs them to protect the witnesses, to end the secrecy, and to fund real research on this topic. Quote, "These phenomena challenge our deepest assumptions about reality, consciousness, and our place in the universe. Exploring them can unlock transformative breakthroughs in technology, biology, and human understanding. Let this be the moment when America chooses courage over fear, transparency over secrecy, and progress over stagnation." Amen. Okay. So next up we have Chief Alex Wiggins, and this one's significant because unlike a lot of the other witnesses, or most of them, who come forward after leaving service, Wiggins is active duty in the Navy. And that alone makes his testimony rare and gutsy. I mean, he's not some retired guy reminiscing, looking back on his career. He's still in uniform, still serving, and he risked a lot to say this under oath. And what he describes is straight out of the greatest hits of UAP lore. If you've been listening to Chillseeker from the beginning, you know that we covered the infamous Tic Tac off the USS Nimitz back in 2004. Well, Wiggins tells us about another Tic Tac nearly 20 years later. Only this time, it doesn't go into the ocean, it rises out of it. And there isn't just one. Picture this. It's February 15th, 2023. Wiggins is on the USS Jackson off the coast of Southern California, just doing his rounds, cross-checking radar with visual sightings. Nothing unusual at all. And then suddenly he sees something. Out of the dark water, a glowing, self-luminous tic-tac shaped craft pushes up into the air. Not crashing in, not flying down, literally emerging from the sea like Poseidon. And then it gets even weirder because this one links up with 3 others. Now we have 4 glowing tic-tac shaped orbs or things of impossible technology hovering in formation. And then, as if on cue, they all take off at once. No sonic boom, no propulsion, no smoke, no exhaust, nothing, just gone. Wiggins emphasizes that this wasn't just his eyes playing tricks. The ship's systems recorded it, multi-sensor confirmed, logged with time and location stamps. In other words, hard data. This is David Fravor and Ryan Graves all over again. Later, in questioning, Representative Lauren Boebert asked Chief Wiggins if the tic-tac he saw rising from the ocean could be ours, and his answer, absolutely not. And when Wiggins reflects on his experience, he hits the same themes we've heard again and again. First, the issue of safety. If these things can dart unpredictably around Navy ships and aircraft, that is a hazard, period. I mean, this is the same issue that Ryan Graves brought up in the first or second hearings that we've had. Next, reporting without retaliation. Sailors should be able to file a report without worrying it'll wreck their careers. Again, same concerns Ryan Graves brought up. And lastly, transparency. Just like everyone else at these hearings, he wants this data to be released and the truth to come out, insofar as it's not a national security risk, which I respect as well. Next, things take a turn with none other than George Knapp. And yes, that George Knapp, the veteran reporter who blew the Bob Lazar story wide open back in the 80s. If you know, you know. Knapp doesn't waste time easing in. He sets the tone right away. For decades, people who've dared to speak out about this stuff have been mocked, threatened, and their careers torched. And he mentions David Grush himself from the first congressional hearing, who is sitting in the room at that very moment, noting how he's a walking example of what happens when you push too close to the truth, even mentioning events in recent days that have happened to Grush, which, I mean, we can only speculate on, but I can imagine that he's getting threatened. Again, we're reminded that certain people, certain factions will seemingly do anything to keep the truth hidden. And Knapp isn't up there spinning wild theories, he's holding receipts. He spent years digging, filing FOIA requests, and prying classified documents out of reluctant hands. And those papers don't match the polite, nothing to see here story that we've been officially fed. Behind closed doors, officials admitted the crafts are real. They fly in formation. They evade pursuit, and they outperform anything that we've got. Then Knapp rewinds the tape to 1989, back to Bob Lazar. So back then, even saying his name was like career suicide. He claimed that he worked at a secret Nevada facility reverse engineering alien craft. And this sounds wild, but Knapp points out over the years, piece by piece, credible scientists, government insiders, and even senators have backed key parts of his story. And now suddenly he doesn't look so crazy. And we will have to cover him soon because I love this story. We've talked about him before in Element 115 and how he basically predicted it, and it's crazy. Like, honestly, I do believe that there's something to this, especially with everything coming out now. But anyway, Knapp doesn't stop there. He drops names, big names. Robert Bigelow, the aerospace mogul whose company worked with Lockheed Martin on, quote, unusual materials. Knapp then flat out says that these materials were not made here. And Lockheed Martin is a rabbit hole that we could spend hours on, and will at some point, because they are so entrenched in UFO lore, it's not even funny. But then, Knapp's testimony gets even more like a spy novel. In the early 90s, he headed to Russia and sat down with Russian defense officials, including the Minister of Defense. And what did they tell him? That the USSR quietly ran the largest UFO investigation program on Earth. Thousands of military reports funneled straight to the Ministry of Defense in Russia, and they weren't just filing sightings away. They were actively trying to build UFOs of their own, well, I guess they wouldn't be unidentified, but crafts of their own, with the goal of becoming more powerful than the United States. Colonel Boris Sokolov, the man in charge, openly admitted to all of this. And Knapp apparently submitted a large amount of documents to Congress corroborating everything that he said here. And this is not the first that we're hearing of this either. If you remember the Immaculate Constellation Congressional Report, which we covered in a whole episode, if you haven't watched it, go watch it now because it's even more relevant now that this new hearing happened. But anyway, it had a section on the USSR and secret documents outlining reverse engineering programs. And again, another rabbit hole that we will definitely have to go down because this is so interesting to me, and there are some crazy Russian UFO sightings. But anyway, next, a video is played that Knapp submitted for the hearing, and this video is apparently tied to Chief Alex Wiggins' testimony, and it shows footage of yet another Tic Tac darting around and then flying away with impossible acceleration. I'm having flashbacks to the original Tic Tac footage that we covered in our first episode, and for everyone watching, I'm playing it right now. I mean, even if you're a skeptic, it's becoming extremely difficult to just ignore this evidence. But anyway, next we've got Dylan Borland, a whistleblower who paid a high price. So, who is this guy? Borland is an Air Force veteran, a former geospatial intelligence specialist who later worked as a defense contractor. His whole job was basically analyzing radar, video, and electro-optical imagery. In other words, this dude is trained to spot what's real and what's not. So when he says that something is strange, he's the guy who would know. So Borland isn't just here to talk about weird lights in the sky. He's actually here as a federal whistleblower. So he's already testified under oath to both AARO and the Intelligence Community Inspector General, or the ICIG, which is basically the watchdog that oversees the entire U.S. intelligence community. So this is a big deal. And Borland starts off with more of the same. He claims he has firsthand knowledge of legacy UAP programs running totally off the books. I mean, at this point, we know, right? With zero congressional oversight, again, we know. He describes craft and technology that, in his words, are not ours. But then comes a story that makes the room go dead silent. It takes place at Langley Air Force Base in 2012. In the middle of the night, Borland sees a massive triangular craft, another triangular craft, like a floating building at least 100 feet wide, lift up near a NASA hangar with no sound, no air displacement, and the surface of it looking bizarre, shifting with a fluid glow. He later describes it in even more detail, saying he watched as a tiny white light rising near the NASA hangar suddenly unfolded into this gigantic 100-foot black triangle. He describes the craft as being 2 stories thick with lights at each corner and this shimmering gold plasma rippling across the surface like it is alive. Again, this sounds exactly like encounters described in the Immaculate Constellation report. Seriously, I feel like these could be ripped straight out of it. Anyway, as this is happening, his phone overheats and dies in his hand, like the craft is somehow interfering with it. And then, boom. In seconds, the thing shoots straight up to commercial jet altitude and vanishes entirely. Later, when asked if he saw undeniable non-human tech, Borland says that belongs in a skiff. And even there, lawmakers might not be legally allowed to hear what he had to say, which, let's be real, sounds like a whole lot of yes without saying the word. But here's the kicker. The real nightmare wasn't his witnessing the craft, it was what came after. Borland says that after this incident, his career was deliberately sabotaged. His security clearance was manipulated, his colleagues were warned not to speak to him, his job applications blacklisted, and he was harassed at work, even dragged into shady polygraphs clearly designed to figure out what he had told investigators. By March of 2023, Borland says he had nothing left to lose. Inspired by David Grush stepping forward, he testified to the ICIG again, but realized chillingly that their main focus wasn't investigating the truth. It was measuring how much he knew. And then he closes with a haunting line. The future of humanity is one in which we either travel to the stars or regress to the Stone Age. The time to act is now. Whew, terrifying. After Borland's intense and tragic testimony, we shift gears to Joe Spielberger, Senior Policy Counsel at the Project on Government Oversight, or POGO. Now, Joe isn't here to blow minds with UFO stories. His job is a little different. He's the guy zooming way out and saying, okay, let's look at the big picture. And the big picture is whistleblowers, the people who risk everything to drag the truth into the light. Spielberger reminds everyone that we only know about things like the Pentagon Papers, Watergate, torture programs, even some of the more recent intelligence scandals because whistleblowers spoke up. No whistleblowers, no truth, period. But then he drops the flip side. Retaliation, the smear campaigns, the firings, the blacklisting. He warns Congress flat out. If whistleblowers are silenced, the truth dies with them. And Spielberger says whistleblower protections are now politicized. Whether someone gets believed or completely destroyed often depends on which political party they're embarrassing. In his closing message, he implores Congress to recommit, but for real this time, to protecting whistleblowers, not just with pretty speeches, which we see a lot of in this hearing, but with actual laws that shield them from retaliation, give them their careers back, and punish the people who try to ruin them. Because right now, they're on their own. With Borland's direct testimony about secret programs and retaliation, followed by Spielberger's stark warning about the death of whistleblowing itself if we don't do something, the hearing has transformed. It's no longer just about strange craft in the sky. It's about a system that punishes truth tellers and buries evidence to hide an earth-shattering truth about what is really going on with this phenomenon. They do not want us to know. Next is some questioning of the witnesses, and then things really heat up. Tim Burchett takes center stage, and whether it's performative or not, he's done playing nice. He blasts the government for stonewalling, points to his UAP Whistleblower Protection Act, which hasn't passed yet, and asks George Knapp how Congress can push harder. Knapp doesn't hesitate. He has an answer, and it is follow the money. He says materials have been handed to private contractors like Lockheed Martin to dodge FOIA oversight. Even cleared officials don't know what they're looking for. The trail has just been buried for too long. And then Knapp drops one of the hearing's scariest stories. Like this is crazy. The 1982 Soviet missile incident. UFOs hovered over a nuclear base for 4 hours, splitting apart, merging, and blinking in and out in strange formations. Then the nightmare. Launch codes lit up. Missiles primed as if they were ready to fire. Nuclear missiles. Officers panicked, unable to shut it down. They literally couldn't. They tried all their controls, all the emergency fail-safes, and nothing worked. Then, all of a sudden, the UFOs left, and suddenly the system went back to normal. Soviet investigators concluded that it was a message. For a moment, the world was seconds from nuclear war, and it wasn't humans holding the trigger. Like, just take a second to really digest that. I don't know if this was some kind of test or if it was actually a warning, a message. Like, at this point, we don't know. Maybe the UAPs were testing to see if they could control these nuclear weapons. Or maybe, like the investigators said, it was just a message and a warning that we are not the ones in control. Either way, it's terrifying. But anyway, then comes the insane video I played for you in the intro, and I will be playing again right now for those watching. So, Rep Burleson played the footage from 2024, a Reaper drone tracking a glowing orb off of Yemen. Another drone fires a Hellfire missile straight into it, and the orb just shuts it off, dragging debris as it keeps moving, and the room is stunned, obviously. Knapp confirms that he's heard of this particular event and says that there are banks of similar videos Congress hasn't seen, which we know at this point. It should be going to you, he insists. Next, shots are fired at Arrow again when their public statement that there's, quote, no scientific evidence of extraterrestrials is called out by George Knapp as total narrative manipulation. It's literally just a cop-out. Borland jumps in and explains that it's technically true only because you'd literally have to go to the origin planet to prove that something is extraterrestrial in strict scientific terms. In reality, the evidence that we do have screams not human. In other words, Arrow is just playing word games to conceal the truth. And now things get even more interesting when one of my favorite topics is brought up. Something we touched on in a previous episode, you might remember, 0-point energy. It's not directly named, but one lawmaker compares trying to reverse engineer UAPs to handing a Harley to the Mayflower settlers. They might polish it, maybe even get it to start, but they'd have no clue how it actually worked or how to build one. And the first nation to crack this code will control energy, technology, and the future itself. That's why many people who've looked into this believe breakthroughs like 0-point energy are being buried. Because if the truth did get out, billionaire empires built on oil and power grids would collapse overnight. And this is something we will absolutely dig into in the future because there is so much evidence of actual murders being committed to cover up scientific breakthroughs and investigations into this topic. It is terrifying. But anyway, Jeffrey Nucitelli brings it home by describing how he's seen massive craft hovering over nuclear sites, witnessed by entire bases, dozens, even hundreds of people at once. At one launch, 500 Air Force police stood guard and none of them could do a thing to stop it. You can just feel the frustration boiling in the room at this point, and lawmakers hammered that it's time to stop talking and act. I mean, please, seriously. Pass the Disclosure Act. Pass Burchett's Whistleblower Protection Act. Stop letting staffers quietly strip amendments from defense bills. The American people want answers, one says, and it's time Congress gets scrappy enough to force them. The gavel falls and the hearing is adjourned. But I know that anyone who has been following this issue for long enough is still skeptical. Will we ever really learn the full truth? And if Congress can't drag it into the light or doesn't want to, then who will? Of course, we know that there is plenty of evidence already out there, and the question isn't if something is going on, it's what is it, who is behind it, and what do they want? What do you think? Tell us in the comments, and if you liked this episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel, give this video a thumbs up, and follow us on Instagram at @ChillSeekerPodcast and on TikTok at @ChillSeekerPod. And please leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It helps more than you know. And like this video. Thank you so much for supporting us, for watching, for getting this out there. And also, Casey definitely hasn't left the podcast. I just did this solo episode because I wanted to get it out really quick and she was busy. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Chill Seeker. Bye.